My name's Davinder, and Davinder is a unisex Punjabi name. When men are called Davinder, their nickname is usually Dave, and one of my friends just abbreviated it to Dave when we were like 13, 14, and it followed me everywhere.
Has Instagram, social media been your sole source of raising investor funding?
It's not been my sole, so like family and friends or people that I know personally.
The people that maybe sometimes you're around in terms of their attitudes.
You know, like just on the phone, you'll say something and I'm like, oh, I just need to hang out with people more like Kazi.
Welcome back to another episode of the Property by Kazi podcast with myself, Kaz, the host. Today we're joined by a special guest, Davinder Sangera. How are you doing? You okay?
Good. Thanks for having me, Kazi.
Now, AKA Spot the Dave. So firstly, where did Spot the Dave come from?
So my name's Davinder, and Davinder is a unisex Punjabi name. When men are called Davinder, their nickname is usually Dave, and one of my friends just abbreviated it to Dave when we were like 13, 14, and it followed me everywhere. Like this friend she went to a neighbouring school. It followed me to my sixth form, to university, to every job I've done. And yeah, it just
I like you being the lady in red heels, but it's also called Dave. I like the juxtaposition.
Exactly.
I think it works really well.
I sound like a middle class, like white man sitting in a pub, but I'm a brown Indian woman not sitting in a pub.
I think it would be really fun if you use it and use sort of, non-gender related stuff in emails as well.
Yeah.
So you just say like, hi, it's Dave. Great to meet you on site. And then turn up as Dave. I think that'd be great stuff.
Yeah, with like red heels, yeah.
Exactly. It's just content in itself. Okay, so you are a property developer, a property investor. At the moment, I most recently visited you on your site in Northwest London.
North London, yeah.
North London. Nice site, which is an auction flip. But previously you were focused on the HMOs in Coventry.
Yes, I was, yeah. So I built up a small portfolio of HMOs in the Midlands.
What do we class as a small portfolio nowadays?
Oh, so I guess anything less than like 20?
I mean, it's sizable. I think you said currently portfolio just shy of 3 million.
Yeah,
right?
It depends on the market, right?
It always, and we are going to go on to the market and how we feel about that. But I think it's weird that you're like a small portfolio, like it's small relatively, but if you turn around and say you've got a portfolio of 3 million, I guess it's all relative, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all relative. It's true. I don't know, I guess.
Because the reason I said for a lot of people, that's very aspirational.
Yeah, there's always somebody smarter, faster, prettier, skinnier doing more developments than you, right?
Of course. So I think at some point, maybe we've just got to stop saying small, large portfolio.
Yeah,
just say it's a portfolio. This is my portfolio.
Yeah.
And people based on their own circumstances. Because I think one thing I find, particularly, both of us have maybe a younger or a developing audience that want to get into property. And sometimes when we refer to things that I think, are amazing, like a £3 million portfolio as small, it can almost be demotivating to some people because it makes them feel too further afield.
True. Yeah, so you're right. Maybe we need to change that and just be like a portfolio.
Exactly. That's what we're going to say. Well, I think it's a sensational portfolio. So what made you first invest in Coventry?
I went to a few investment areas. So I went to Liverpool, Newcastle, Sunderland, Derby. Wow. And then
just trying to get the whole Premier League, really.
Yeah, basically. And then I went to, it was like Coventry, Corby and Kettering. And it sounds really silly, but the day that I went to Coventry, the sun was shining and I walked around. I had like viewings booked as I had in the other investment areas, but I met builders and I just felt like I got a sense of like the area as I was walking the streets, which I hadn't got in the other property, in the other areas. And I could see easily like where the HMO investment areas could be. You could see the developments going on. You could see like there were to let signs as well in a area. So I just got a good feeling for it. But after doing the research and the due diligence, when I was like doing all the stuff online, like I think it's important to go out and actually meet people in those areas. You can do so much stuff online. You can view properties now, especially after COVID. Everyone's doing the videos and doing the internal floor plans where it's like interactive. But it's really important to meet the people and to get that, to like actually interact with them and have conversations with the letting agents, with the estate agents, with builders, and meeting the people that will be part of your power team.
That's good. So you mentioned like you had quite a lot of areas, and it sounds like you did quite a lot of research prior to even walking the streets. Would you say you're naturally somebody who does a lot of research? Are you more of an active learner, or are you more of a...
I'm definitely more of an active learner. I have to work really hard to be analytical. It's not like natural to me. But what I want is other people to do the analysis for me. So like working with virtual assistants has like revolutionized my life, because I have like a structure and I'm quite logical with the way with the way that I want to do things. So for example, I used to like scour through auction catalogs, and the way I would do it, I would have a specific few strategies. So I'd go through, there'd be 120 lots, and I would pick out on an Excel spreadsheet the lots that I wanted deal analysis done. But I didn't want to do that deal analysis, so I wanted my VA to do it, who would spend probably 10 to 20 hours doing it, but I wanted to just look at the top level stuff. So I want the analysis done, I just don't want to be the person doing it. And I would have the spreadsheet, there'd be like 40 maybe items that my VA would need to go through and tick box. Some would take like 5 seconds, some would like take a little bit longer. But yeah, I want thorough analysis done. I just don't want to be the person doing it.
That's fair. I think you have to identify where your strengths are, and also if you don't like certain things, be able to automate and delegate them. How long, in terms of using a VA, which is a virtual assistant, I know we throw out a lot of jargon randomly,
sorry.
so it's a virtual assistant for those that are not familiar with the term. That sounds like quite a high level task for a VA to do. How long did it take you to be able to trust in their analysis?
I think the first few ones we did it together. And of course, what happens is, even as you're explaining things, you realize like you can add bits more. So something that I might do naturally, just because I've been doing property for a few years, I realized like actually I have to break it down. So there was like a few, it would take like a week maybe to like really thoroughly go through it. They would watch me, what I'm looking at, and then my spreadsheet would just get bigger and better. And of course, like I would just have a basic spreadsheet, and then I'd get the virtual assistant to create it to make it look nicer. Because again, I want things to look nice. It's like I want to have a clean house, but I don't want to clean. I want a cleaner to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
but I
you
want
won't
everything
get the
to be
type
clean.
of cleaning in the way unless you delegate and explain to them this is how I like
well, I
things.
can't clean. I can cook, but so that's the example that I'm giving. So there might be somebody that's really good at deal analysis, and so my virtual assistants, they would pick out, because they're just analytical, they would just pick out things that I maybe wouldn't look at, and so they would be better at me at analyzing, and that's what I need because I'm top level stuff.
That's good. I think. And what point? 'Cause obviously you mentioned you've been in property for a while. At what point did you say, you know what, I need to start paying for the services that I need? Because I think a lot of the time, me personally, for ages, I'd be trying to do everything.
Doing everything.
So at what point did you say, you know what, it's worthwhile me paying to actually start employing a VA or other services?
I think the first time it like clicked with me is, so when I had my first 2 HMOs, there were 5-bed HMOs, so I had 10 tenants, and I was self-managing the first 2 HMOs, and I just didn't want to do it. I was spending so much time doing admin, being the point of contact, and I was 100 miles away. So like early on, I just identified that I just always wanted a letting agent, and I didn't really care to know my tenants' names. Like, it sounds awful, but I didn't really want to build that relationship with them. I just wanted, as long as the money was hitting the bank account and it was coming in. But I did want somebody who would then be able to solve their problems that was a little bit more emotional. Do you know what I mean? It's just, I just knew it wasn't me because I'm not that character.
Yeah, because you identified, like, it's like basic internal. And I say this is something that like I probably speak about it in like half the podcast, but being able, the real basic business principles in terms of just SWOT analysis and being able to do that for yourself can be really, really important. And I think also for somebody potentially who's maybe, not in a position where they're able to buy, but you've got a different business, i.e. you're starting a property management business, rent to rent. Like you said, you've identified things that you don't want to do. And you want to find somebody who can do the things that you can't do. So if you can create that value proposition towards a landlord, it's a great way to start a business relationship that you don't know that has no bounds of how far it could go with them.
Yeah, 100%, especially when you talk about rent to rent. So I love rent to renters because I want them to do rent to rent on my properties. But I don't want to do rent to rent, right? And like there are so many like younger guys killing it doing rent to rent. Like we just spoke offline before we started the podcast. And I think it's amazing, but I just don't have the energy for it. And I want to own assets. So I don't want to do the rent to rent. And I know even if I did rent to rent, I wouldn't be so attached to those properties as I am to my own ones, because I own them. So I love rent to renters, and I actually just gave one of my apartments to a rent person. And then I did an Insta story and I had 11 people reach out to me, and I just thought I should have just utilized my Instagram.
Yeah, you can, because effectively it's just what you have. You have something that loads of people want, and also then you can sort of pick the cream of the crop, the people that know how to do it really well, but also, like you said, with the feeling of the area, the feeling of that person, that their values resonate with what you want.
100%. And then building that relationship with them, someone that is hungry, someone that's driven, someone that's just gonna, sort out problems and be a problem solver, rather than like complaining or calling me all the time.
So let's talk problems. Now you've mentioned, that's a nice segue. One of the most common areas that when we talk about problems, I think, is in the build itself.
Yes.
How did you find, managing contractors and builders for, your first few projects?
In hindsight, I had such an amazing builder for my HMOs when I was doing them, but it took me a while to get there. So the first two, I had this like bigger English guy. He had a £13 million property portfolio. He was also building a 40-bedder from the ground up. He'd bought some garages, demolished them, was building like a block, student block. And I just really liked him, really liked him. And because he had a PA, a personal assistant, he did all of his team, his PA did all of the admin. So I didn't need to put in the building notice to the council or instruct like a private building control. He did my CCTV surveys and like my build overs when you were doing a build over and when we were doing an extension. So he did all of the admin, and that was really easy. So I got lucky finding this builder, but he also did some other things that like necessarily weren't maybe in line with what I wanted, like the HMO to look at. So for example, he would go, right, I'm giving you the HMO, but you're getting the carpets and everything. So I then had to find other people to do the internal kind of, getting the carpets in and making the HMO look super nice, all the way that I wanted. And then I got another builder who was a charmer, but he was awful. And I call him like Cowboy Craig, and that is his name. And he was actually just awful. He just took money from people and just wouldn't finish jobs. And he ruined my piece. And that was on project number 3 and 4. And I actually had 3 and 4 were client projects. And I actually had to end up walking away from them, walking away from number 3. But then at the same time, I'm literally in like Serco or Juicens crying to like the guys that work there, because of builders and trades go there and they'll go, all right, I'll introduce you to some builders. What do you need? Do you need an Indian? Do you need this? And I'm like, I don't care if he's green, purple, blue, black, orange. I just need someone that can do stuff, right? And that can finish off my work. So then I got introduced to this Romanian build team, and I did like 10 projects with them. They were amazing. They ended up splitting. So I used them for several ones. So I got really lucky with these Romanians. In hindsight, I got really lucky with the English guy as well. Cowboy Craig ruined my piece of my life. But they did a lot of the project management. So they had the contractors, and I didn't actually have to individually reach out to any of the electricians, the plumbers, the gas engineers, because they did all of that. And now in London, and when I talk to, and I'm doing this North London one, which you've come to and which you filmed at, now when I talk to like even the home counties investors, they go, yeah, I stay away from London because builders in London just shaft you. They just do this, they just do that. And I'm like, is it London? Is it me? Is it the builder? Is it the area?
I feel like this whole build, like there's, don't get me wrong, like a lot of people have, do say they do have issues with builders. And I think potentially like, because you don't go through the as formal in terms of like a qualification standpoint as, what you do in other areas, like in Scandinavia, in Germany, there's, a lot more of a qualification.
For builders, for contractors. Okay.
And then I also think when you come out of the corporate world, trying to deal with builders, you're used to being able to CC in somebody's manager. It's just a completely different relationship builder. So I think my background, like in terms of outside of my first job, was sort of like in Phones for You in sales. And we had to go on a whole training course about how you sort of assimilate and work with people from all different walks of life and build relationships. I think that's something that really helped me. I think what I find sometimes is people from a corporate world almost have like this negative impact, not necessarily to look down on builders, but like, have a way in which they relate to them that isn't necessarily conducive to a good long-term relationship.
Okay.
And effectively, you want your builder to be on side. Like you said, you built with the third build team who really worked with you, started to understand what you want. You understood what they want.
They came from the Midlands to my Wandsworth flat, and he was like, I won't charge you a rate, just, brought the carpets because they were cheaper to get them from the Midlands. So yeah, I had a great relationship with him. But again, when I stopped doing HMOs, that kind of ended as well.
Yeah. I think so. From a hindsight perspective, in terms of finding a builder that works for you, what kind of hints would you have or tips would you have for people?
Okay, so my rule of 5, I have a rule of 5 that whenever you're looking for like a builder or a mortgage broker or a solicitor, always get 5 recommendations or 5 contacts. And I say this because like someone that you work with as like a mortgage broker I might not have that same style of talking with them or like having a conversation with them. So although I might get a recommendation from you, I still want to get 4 more other people. So I think it's really important to build the relationships individually, even if like someone's your best friend or someone that you really like look up to. I think it's really important to get those like 5 contacts. So 5 builders, get them to come in and meet them on site and try to get their recommendations from them. So that would be a second thing. Like, can you give me some referrals or, someone that you've done a recent project with? I found now a lot of times they're like trying to impress those, they'll invite you into their project. If not, you can just ask them and say, can I come visit one of your projects? What are you working on at the moment? What are you doing? So sometimes as well is when you're interviewing a builder, there's different types of builders. There's and not everyone knows everything. So there might be a builder that started as a carpenter. So he's going to be amazing at carpentry, but there's going to be a guy that started like plastering or like tiling roofs, so they're going to be amazing at that. And so depending on the project, depends on what you need. So when I was doing HMOs, because I was doing back to brick renovations, I needed an all-over builder that knew how to do everything: build roofs, ground floor extensions, and doing internal reconfiguration and the plumbing work. Whereas with my London project, I'm converting a 1-bed into a 2-bed, and it's an internal configuration. So I don't need someone that knows how to do extensions. I don't need someone that needs a roof work. I literally just need like an interior kind of renovations, refurbishments person. So actually the skill set is a lot less than what I need in the London project, just because I'm not doing those HMO stuff. But at the same time, I want to interview them, see what they're doing, get their recommendations. So those would be definitely my tips.
That's good. I think, it can be a little bit of a minefield for some people, particularly because I think a lot of people don't necessarily know exactly what they want until it happens. So you might think like some people, I could go into somewhere thinking, I'm happy to project manage. I just want somebody who can do all these things. But actually you mentioned things like builder over agreements, drainage surveys, like the confirming party wall, dealing with stakeholders, all of these things. Actually, some people are like, you know what, in hindsight, I'd rather pay the premium to have somebody who has an admin team who can deal with all of these things.
Now I would never pass that over to a builder. It's only for my first 2 because I was so inexperienced. And also you're building up a company, you're learning how to raise finance, you're dealing how to like set up the QuickBooks Xero systems. There was so much information overload when I was setting up my company and buying the properties in a company, that having a builder that was just doing that it seemed like it was the easiest thing to do. But now I wouldn't do that. Like I want to be in control of the admin. So I wouldn't pass that on to a contractor just because I want it to be my contact. So I had to do 8-party wall awards with the North London flat. And they were my contacts. I want it to be my architect. I want it to be my people.
8-party wall is a lot for an internal refurb.
It was an octagon, just an octagon flat, windowless.
It's a lot. It's hope sent everyone some Easter eggs, kept everybody on side.
Oh yeah, we got through it. So
okay, fair enough. So I mean, why HMO originally? Like, what was it that made you were you just looking online? Was it education? What made you say HMO is the route I want to go down?
So I did property education, and I bought a buy-to-let, and I bought a buy-to-let when I was in banking, and I utilised my salary at the time, maxed out the mortgage I could get, and then just bought one buy-to-let, and that was generating me like £1,500 net income. And although the rule of thumb in education is the buy-to-let is like plus 200 quid, £250, I had this 1,500, so I wanted something similar to that. So I'd left banking now, so I had a pot and I had the 1,500 a month coming in, but I just wanted to triple that, and then from tripling it, like double that again, and then triple it again. And so what kept coming back to me was the HMOs just seemed was a plus of plus £1,000, and that seemed like the strategy that I was going to do. The other thing is, when I bought my buy to let, I used my own money, and my family helped me out. They gave me a bit of money, but when I was doing the HMO strategy and I was going into doing property full time, I needed to raise everything. So I realized, like, okay, I need to do a buy, refurbish, refinance rent model because I wanted to hold the asset. But I needed to do it with investors' money that I could then repay them. So it just seemed like the HMOs was the quickest and the fastest way for me to get to the goals that I wanted to achieve of getting, doubling, tripling my
because
income.
you can push the value up through obviously the conversion, and then your yield is a lot higher, so it ticks all the boxes that you needed personally for that property investment strategy.
Exactly.
You touched briefly on raising investment, and I think I'm right to say you're currently in the seven figures of raising investor finance.
Yeah, I've raised 7 figures, and honestly, I think I was going to do there was like a small deal, like I just needed like 100 grand small deal, but it was a small, like, it would have been a quick like flip. It was just really interesting deal that came across my desk in like November, December, and I just went on Instagram, and I think I could have easily raised 500,000 like that, and I didn't end up doing the deal, but I had those conversations with people that were willing to invest in me, so I could easily be double what I've raised, but I'm also quite careful, like you are paying interest onto that money. I don't want to lose money, and I don't want to be where I'm not able to repay investors.
So has Instagram, social media been your sole source of raising investor funding, or have you done it through other mediums as well?
It's not been my sole. So like family and friends or people that I know personally. But what social media has done is allowed people that I met, say like 3 to 10 years ago, see what I'm doing and come back for a piece of the pie.
Okay.
Whereas if there wasn't social media, the investor that I met hiking in Nepal, doing Everest Base Camp, wouldn't have come and invested, 80 grand with me. The woman that I met in Costa Rica, Nicaragua, although she didn't end up investing, but I wouldn't have had those conversations if she wasn't seeing what I was doing 10 years later. Yeah. Because the contacts would have been lost.
Yes,
the relationships
exactly.
would have been
You keep your shop window, you keep the conversations open, and people can see what you're up to, and then they can make the inquiries, or when you do put out a call to action, they can come back to say, we are potentially interested. In terms of advice for somebody trying to raise investor finance potentially for the first time, any tips for them?
Oh, I have like a whole like traffic light system as well, like an
you got a lot. You're a system person, aren't you?
I am a systems
Your
person.
5 rules, this system, traffic lights.
I'm proper systems. Yeah, like it's just how my brain works, like logically, like putting things in and having the steps. So I spent a lot of time and energy, wasted time and energy, not being able to identify who were angel investors. And I would have conversations with people that I would call like B. They were like people that wanted to do what I was doing, or C were collaborators. Now, collaborator could be like an architect or a structural engineer or a mortgage broker, solicitor, or somebody that like has and a skill within the property industry that I might need to work with. But there were like a lot of like people that I would say would be Bs that wouldn't be the angel investors. And I spent a lot of time and energy talking to them, and then realized, oh, they want to do what I do, which is fine, but I shouldn't be raising money from them because they're in growth period as well. There might be a way for us to work together. And then there was like D, time wasters, and when I like have conversations with people, I can ask the questions, go, are they A, B, C, D? And how can I work with them? If they're a D and they're a time waster, it's like, get rid of them as fast as possible. But if they're an angel investor, cool, okay, let's work on them. And if they're a B, maybe there's another way that we can work together. Can I source and project manage them a project? That's what I was doing when I was doing HMOs. I wasn't always just doing it for myself. And so, yeah, and if it's C, is it collaborator? Is it somebody that I like their energy, I like what they're about, I like what they're saying, I like how they interact with me, or even online, and what their persona is. So maybe there's a way to work together when I need, that structural engineer or that person. So yeah, identifying people as quickly as possible so you don't waste time. And then just having a traffic light system of having 10 people that would be like 10 people that wouldn't invest in you, so there would be your reds, 10 people that might invest in you, so there would be your ambers, and 10 people that would definitely invest in you, that'd be your greens. Then what you do, you start with the reds and you pick up the phone, you have conversations with them, because they're not going to invest in you anyway. So you have the conversations and you make the mistakes and you do the ums and the ahs and you say, oh, I don't know. And they're like, well, you let them shout at you and ask those questions so that you can then create a script and you can then practice what you're going to say. And you go, actually, I don't know the answer to that. Let me come back to you. go to the ambers, warm them up, butter them up, and then you go to the greens, because you don't want to make the mistakes with the greens. You want to make all the mistakes with your reds, with the people that you know weren't going to invest in you.
I like that system. So that's a nice little gem. Traffic light system, a way of managing investors. First starting point, like categorize them and work out who you're dealing with, and then a way of talking to them to, you know, best sort of get the conversion level that you like to get that level of investment. I think you've had a busy period in terms of going for the HMOs. What do you see, like, where are your kind of next steps? I know you got the London deal presently. What are you looking to do next?
Yeah, so I utilising my skills, and I want to be in London because I live in London, so I don't want to really go out of London. My idea was to create a company with to create a company with a JV partner that brings in the funding, and that we build up this company to 100 units, buy-to-lets, or like, you know, portfolios of blocks of like buy-to-let, and lease it on long leases to the council or to social housing providers, and then exit by selling it to a pension fund or a private equity fund in like 7 to 10 years. So last year and like the year before, I was looking through like auction lots, and there's a lot of social housing providers that do sell their weak stock in auction. Now, those assets are great because they'll have like 10, 20 years of gas safety certs, electrical certs, and they'll be in those areas that there were already like social housing families in them. And I think there's a real need to do that. So that's like something that I have been like vocal about and would love to do. I did it with my Wandsworth flat for a while. So I had it leased to the flat leased to the local council for 3.5 years, and just like the stability of it. It was like really passive. I'm all about passive income. I wasn't getting the best rate, but I wasn't doing anything either. You know, I never had to go to that property.
So like sort of risk and reward. You know, the reward might not have been as high, but the risk, you know, in terms is really low, which is good. I mean, it's good and a very big goal in terms of 100 units exiting to a pension fund. I think it's something that I hear more people talking about in terms of exits. I think in terms of the purchase mechanism, like you said, buying through these housing associations that are selling off, they're generally safer as well because they're like institutional sales as opposed to like fire sales.
Yes.
You know, it's just the way they sell products as opposed to, you know.
They just offload their weak stock and then keep asset manage and reinvest.
So, I mean, you sound like you've been very, very busy. How long have you been in property for now?
So 5 years.
But outside of that, I mean, so you've got your systems in place, which is great. You also talked about doing what was that summit you said you went to? The Mount Everest summit?
Base Camp. Yeah, so I love climbing mountains. I love being
that's what I was going to say. You're climbing mountains, you're traveling all over.
I love it.
Is that how you feel that you relax? Is that how you try to avoid burnout by traveling?
100%. Like I always have to have a trip. I just love being away, being with friends. I just came back from Lisbon and with a friend that lives there. So I just love like having small trips and big trips. That's what like life is about for me. So I'd rather like, so again, like with property, when I looked at what my ideal life looked like and worked backwards from there, it was, I want to spend 9 months of the year out of the country. That's what my perfect ideal life looks like, right? And for me, I'd rather like drive a, not a glitzy car because I don't want to spend time in the UK. Like I don't want to be driving the car. In 9 months, it's going to be in the driveway doing nothing and collecting dust. So I'd rather like have the ability to just be away and travel all the time. So there'll be like times where I go, oh no, I can't do that because I don't have money for it. But I'll always have money for a trip, like there'll be always like things, I don't really value things and like materialistic stuff, but definitely like going away and booking a trip and having holidays it's
kind of how you find you refresh, recharge. Because I know we've spoken about in the past, and it's like, social media is good for so many reasons. You spoke about raising finance, being able to connect with people that you potentially would have lost contact with, being able to build new connections, new relationships. But there's the other side of social media I don't think we don't talk about as much, which is the dark side. Number one, it can be that there's a lot of people that are maybe out here talking about things they're not really doing. But number two is also like, because on social media, everybody just puts out their wins and it seems like everybody's doing amazing.
The comparison effect.
Does that ever affect you?
Oh my gosh, all the time. Especially in like 2020, 2021, I had to go off social media. Like there were times where I couldn't feel happy for someone else's success because I felt like it was taking it away from mine. So there's a concept of like a zero-sum game. So I studied maths. So a zero-sum game is like, say if there was like a finite amount of resources or like we were eating a meal. If I ate 3/4, it's because I took away stuff from you, so you only ate a quarter. So if I ate like 90% of the plate, and so I felt like there were finite resources, and somebody, if they were putting stuff out on social media and their HMOs, it was taking away from my ability to shine on my own, which was so silly. Like, I definitely had a scarcity mindset. So but now I just am a bit more abundant. I can see other people's successes online, and I feel happy for it, and I get inspired. Like, we were talking about like the Gen Z generation, the young guys, I get so inspired by them, and instead of like feeling a little bit jealous or the comparison effect, which I did a few years ago, it's more like, okay, how can I like collaborate or work with these guys, and they're reaching out to me for something, and I'll reach out to them for something else, and it's like, it's just collaborative. But the other dark side of social media that I have experienced, and this was before I was even in property, is I had a social media stalker. So someone that just found me on social media. I'd never met this person, but we were from the same area. So sometimes, one time I was sat on the tube and he was on the same tube with me, and he would like send letters to my parents' house, because that was the address that I'd registered. And he'd sent letters to my parents' house, and one was like an 80-page letter. So he went to prison for 6 years for the
80 pages.
80 pages. And he'd like printed out pictures of burnt faces of burnt women. And he like sent me photos of like just my family, which I put on social media. So from my Instagram, I'd picture them with like a fake gun, and like had said he would like throw acid at me. So he got sentenced to prison for 6 years for stuff that he did or said that he would do.
That's insane. Well,
so
I'm glad obviously everything was okay longer term, but yeah, that's sorry to hear that. And that's obviously the very, very dark side of social media, which just goes to show that we do have to be careful. As much as it's great that we say put out everything, I'm always a bit conscious of how much personally I put out there, and it's finding a balance of what works for 100%. You and what you feel comfortable with. Like,
I wouldn't share my private life, but I do share my grandparents. They had like the chronicles of Babaji and Dadaji during Instagram. They were a big hit, and then I wouldn't like I like to share the negatives as well. So when I have gone through the builder drama, like now that I'm confident and I'm comfortable, and I think also because I've done so many projects, whereas I wouldn't have done that for project number 1 or project number 2, and I definitely didn't do it when Cowboy Craig was ruining my peace and like my insanity. But definitely like sharing the pain, because everyone else is going through it, and it just makes it more real. And that's the comments that I get back, like that I am being real, and also just sharing things that I'm doing, like even if I'm looking at a spreadsheet, just
Yeah, I think people realistically, like we can have our brands, and I can be Property by Kazzy, you can be Spot the Dave, but the reality is that people are going to relate more to you personally as well, which is why when we talk about social media, you do kind of have to be the face of your brand. If you were just a logo and you never posted anything and it was just the pictures of houses, people would find it hard to find that relatable angle and be able to connect and really have an interactive, base of people that, actually want to see you win.
I agree.
I think, when you spoke about the Instagram and, the difference between a scarcity versus abundance mindset, I think, sort of hyper capitalism, that was always the case. Yes. That there was only a certain amount of the pie. There was only the pie only got incrementally bigger each year. However, because of credit and because of capitalism, the pie gets so much bigger. Correct. And there's so much more. And I think sometimes like it's traveling, it's getting out of your niche, whether it be just traveling around the UK, traveling around even your own city, but like living in South London. If you go up to Canary Wharf and you walk around and you look at the skyscrapers, you see everything that's going on. It's almost like it takes you out of that comfort zone to say, if I was worried about somebody trying to do a 1 to 2 bed conversion or a HMO conversion, look how much money there is out there to make. Yeah. And I think definitely if you are finding that maybe social media is demotivating you sometimes, like you said, it's just a case of changing your perception, which you can do through travel, through moving out of, a stuck environment, and also the people that maybe sometimes you're around in terms of the attitudes of people that are very close to you sometimes.
Yeah, and I think like we've had personal conversations, and like I don't think I've told you this, but sometimes even our conversations that we've had when like just on the phone, you'll say something and I'm like, I just need to hang out with people more like Kazzy. That's the people that I need to.
That's nice.
But we like, even when we spoke, like I think it was like in December or something, and I remember where I was when I was talking to you because I used to play netball in Hyde Park, and I was just like there in the changing rooms having a conversation with you, and I told you about somebody that was putting me down quite a lot, and you were like, you need to look into their eyes when they're talking to you. And I was like, that's it. I just need to hang out with people like Kazi or people like Tej, you know, that are just there like lifting me up and thinking that I'm the best and can do everything, rather than me like also having my own limiting beliefs. Like we all have our own limiting beliefs, but if you're around people that are always like, oh, don't do this, don't do that, oh, you shouldn't do this, or this is going to happen, like we take risks, but it's all about taking calculated risks in property. And that's what the systems and the processes and the research is about. And you know, you can have 1,000-line spreadsheet to tick the boxes, but ultimately you've got to go out into those investment areas and you've got to meet those people, and you can try to de-risk as much as possible, but there's an element where there's something's just not in your control, and you just have to go out and do it.
At a certain point you have to take the step, but also you have to take the step and believe it's going to work. Like it sounds almost airy-fairy, but if you go into something believing it will fail, you're going to be negative at every juncture. So every time there's that T-junction of will it go right, left or no, you're way more likely for it to go left and veer into the no, because that's the, you know, that's what you're putting out there, and that's what you're likely to reciprocate back. But you know, I think it's been a really interesting conversation. I think one thing we didn't touch on, you just mentioned it, but obviously your background is maths. Where did you study?
I studied at Royal Holloway.
Oh, nice.
University of London.
Fancy. And then you worked for a little while in New York in banking. You worked in London in banking. How do you feel? Because I think, you know, we spoke about it as well, like sometimes, you know, the 9 to 5 gets a bashing sometimes. How do you feel the 9 to 5 did or didn't assist you in your journey?
So mine was like a 7 to 7.
Okay.
So I started work. I started corporate life in New York. Started working for 2 investment banks, and then it was only a year program just because of the visa that I was on. Really wanted to stay out there for a few more years, but couldn't. Just came back to London. Started working at Canary Wharf. So HSBC was the company that I was with for like the longest period. Was that with them for 4.5 years. So in the concrete jungle of Canary Wharf, looking at those skyscrapers. And I was a trader on the trading desk. But my hours were 7:30 till like 6 really. And there'd be like one day maybe I'd stay a little bit longer. But yeah, I do now see the benefits of, not even now, I've always seen the benefits of it. You know, you don't take the risks, you get an income that comes in. Even like on Instagram now, I follow quite a few like money, like financial, like Instagram accounts, just because I'm into that. And some of them will share like the ages of people and what their salary is and their trajectory. And we need people in the service industry. We need solicitors, we need mortgage brokers, we need like, you know, people that own restaurants and people that work in the restaurants. Like I worked at Primark when I was 18 for £5.46 an hour. Would I do that now? No, because of my level
I worked there as well.
Sorry?
I worked in Primark as
Did
well.
you?
Yeah, that was my first job.
Me too. How old were you?
I think I was 15. I don't even know if it was legal, but I'm sure I was 15 when I worked
Maybe it was 3 months before your 16th birthday when you get the NI number.
Yeah, I think
nice.
it was.
So I was like 18.
So that's probably on like £3 something at 15.
Yeah, because we're similar ages, so it probably was. Yeah, so, you know, I worked at Primark £5.46. I believe in the service industry because it serves me. I go and shop in shops and I sit in restaurants and I sit on planes, and therefore we need pilots. And so I believe in that. And I do think that, you know, the 9 to 5 industry, or having a stable income and a stable salary, is really important. And you know, I say this to some of like my mentees. One of my mentees, he didn't even know this. He's in in the bracket of the top 1% earners in the UK. And I had to tell him, do you realize like with your salary, you're one of the top 1% earners in the UK?
It's like my friend's brother, same thing. He's like, oh, you, so his brother and myself, like, oh, you lot are killing it. And sometimes we look at him, we're like,
you're killing it too.
Do you know like what?
Yeah.
Like, but again, it's that maybe
it's perspective.
Looking over the window, grass is always greener, and everything. But the reality is that there's so much that comes with being an entrepreneur, and it's not that it's not for everyone, but it's not for always for everyone for the right reasons. I don't think
it is for everyone. I don't think that entrepreneurship is for everyone. And there have been times where I'm like, should I just get a job? You know, I'm going through this now.
Hey, you see the shit you see sometimes like,
if someone would pay me 150k, then I could a year,
listen,
you know.
Do you know how many times that it's like I'm on my laptop at like 9 o'clock, I've got a meeting, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, so I remember having a call, my friend was like, he was just like, oh yeah, but call me on this number after 5. I turned my work phone off at 5. I was like, you're just off.
Yeah.
You're just off.
Exactly. When I was in banking, even though I had to be up at 5:45 and be at my desk for 7:30, I was off. I had my weekends and I had my evenings, and that work BlackBerry just got dusty in my bag, you know, until I needed to look at it again. So yeah, like I do think even though I was having a conversation like this month, I think, going, if someone paid me 150k, I would do it. So then I could then get the mortgages, get the resi mortgages, flip that property, do it for 2 years, do about 3 of those projects, and then be like, right, I'm going back to entrepreneurship.
That's the thing, though. The grass is always greener. When you're living in entrepreneurship, and like I've been, for example, I remember my friend one time was like, you got to get your emails off your phone because we're out.
Like,
your emails off your phone because we're out. Like
I take push off
in like a club, for example, in Dubai, and he's like, your whole mood just changed, and now you want to go home because something like has come through, and the way it can affect your mindset 100%. And mood, and it can be all consuming. But at the same time, it can all be all consuming to the point that it makes you so happy because things are going so well. Yeah. So I do think you have to remember that regardless of where you are, like when it's going really, really well, there will be times that it's the complete opposite. But remember the positives to bolster with it when it's going bad. And when it's going bad, just remember how good it can be and use them as a balance.
That's true.
I think I always ask everybody the most common question that I get asked, which is, regardless of age, somebody that wants to get started in property, they could have money, not have money, but whether it's mindset, advice, what advice would you give for somebody that wants to get started now?
I think knowledge is key. There's so many changes that are happening just with legislation. So keeping on top of that, joining like networking groups, so I'm very big on like community. And I think something that I didn't do at the beginning of my journey, everything was all in my head. Like I had to solve all these problems, but it was just me alone doing it. So it was always me and my property business. And I'd have like my letting agent or my mortgage broker or my solicitor, but I was making all those decisions, and you get decision fatigue as well. So joining those communities where you can openly talk to someone and go, hey, I'm going through this, or I'm going through this with a builder, or this has happened, or this mortgage isn't going to come in, and I'm not going to get 75 grand that I thought I was going to get. And I didn't have those open conversations. I was like so nervous, so scared, unconfident. And I guess I just didn't realize that I could, openly talk about it with people, and people would go, hey, the same thing has happened to me, and it's only in these private conversations that you have with people, and they're like, oh, this has happened, that's happened. You're like, okay, everyone's going through it. Everyone's going, through their hurdles, and everyone's crossing hurdles. So definitely joining a community of like whatever it is, like a property networking event where you're consistently seeing.
I feel like you're just trying to pitch the Property by Kazi community right now.
Maybe, I don't know. I'm not part of it.
I'm joking, but you're very right. Just accountability, and
for
also
sure. Like you've got your own community. Like Tej Talks has got his own one, and like even Baker Street Property Meet, which I go to regularly. Like you see the people again and again. I get really fatigued by being behind a computer screen. I can only do maximum 2 hours with a virtual assistant on a laptop. But if someone was working with me, I could work with them 8 hours a day if they were sitting next to me, because I did that. So I get really fatigued. So I'm very much like being behind, like, and seeing like someone like physically. So I prefer going to like networking events and just find one that fits you or is like in line with like what you want to get out of it, and then just building those relationships with those people as well.
No, I think that's great advice. So for the people that maybe are watching or also listening, where can they find you? How can they connect with you?
Yeah, Instagram is like the one that I use the most. So Instagram, Spot the Dave, and also on LinkedIn as Davinder Singera. So Instagram's probably the one I. And
obviously different people, how could you potentially help them? What have you got to offer for them in terms of connections? What type of people would you like to reach out to you?
Yeah, so I offer mentorships as well. So I do a one-on-one. I'm looking at setting up a community inspired by what you're doing.
Love that.
And again, like before I would have thought like if you have your community, if I come in, I'm going to take away, but actually we have our own brands and we have our own people that vibe with us, and there might be a bit of crossover, but actually like,
and the crossover's good because you know how many people will tell me, oh, I'm in your community, but I also do Alfred's mastermind, I've done Ted's e-learning, I've done a bit of this, bit of that, and I don't look at it like, oh well, they've done this. It's like, okay, cool, like, and we can all learn from each other.
I think I've also had a bit of a inferiority complex, and now that I'm breaking out of that, I'm like, there's no young Indian Punjabi woman smashing it, or putting it out. Maybe I can be that person.
You can definitely be that person. Well, it's been amazing having you on. We appreciate you. This has been another episode of the Property by Kazi podcast. We're back each and every week. If you haven't subscribed already, what are you doing? Make sure you do that. And if there's any guests that you want to see, let us know in the comment section and we'll do our utmost to try and get them on. Appreciate you and catch you next week.